In light of the Dakota Access Pipeline protests, what do you think could or should have been done to prevent such an event?
Well, we'll be revisiting our process once all the dust settles on this current issue to try to find some improvements. But I will reinforce the fact that the Commission did follow the standard process that we have followed for several decades on citing this type of infrastructure.
The Department of Health and Human Services has been cut, and this is one of my pet projects with this audit, is that I would rather cut that last. That's, I consider to be one of our good branches. It's something that we need. It aids the vulnerable. And when we do these across-the-board cuts, the Department of Human Services is always included. I think if we audit government, we can find the branches of government that are not efficient.
You're elected treasurer to an office you want to close. How will you go about that?
There are a number of ways to deal with this. It requires a constitutional change. There are 44 places where the treasurer's office is noted in our law, in our century code. So what I propose is introducing a bill following election. I introduce a bill to the North Dakota legislature which outlines all of these areas and create a method where the legislature assigns or eliminates those duties. And my preference would be the elimination of those duties. Then I would ask the legislature to also put a matter before the citizens on a ballot. So at the next general election, the citizens would make a yes or no decision about eliminating the treasurer's office. So I see this as a partnership between the treasurer and the legislature and the citizens making this systemic change.
What I represent is a vote for making the system more efficient, trying to change and modernize the way that we track our funds. And I have some understanding of how to do this. If you want the office to run the same as it has before, you can vote for the incumbent. If you want to, and I actually support the concept of eliminating the office. I think that would be a perfectly fine thing to do as a libertarian. I would like to see government get smaller. However, the treasurer doesn't actually have the authority to eliminate the office. And I have some concern about what would happen to it when it's eliminated. Do we just shift everything it does to other departments? Does that actually make it more efficient? I think that through the treasurer, by electing someone to the treasurer's office who's willing to update things, willing to implement new technology and make the office more efficient, we can reduce the cost, we can provide better service to the public. I'm not sure that simply eliminating the title will accomplish that, and I don't think that we'll accomplish anything different by keeping it the way it is.
What would be your best advice on how to reduce the national debt? Do you have steps, a plan of action, please?
I have a great plan of action for that. Thanks for asking that question. Start sending people to Washington that will actually vote for a balanced budget. If you do that, guess what? The budget will get balanced. If you keep electing Democrats and Republicans like we have for the better part of 80 years now, you'll end up with the same result. So I'm laying it out there as plain as I can for you, those watching, those listening. You can continue to elect Republicans and Democrats, do the same thing over and over and expect a different result. Or you can actually vote for somebody different, like myself, that would go to Washington and make those hard decisions necessary and take all the political heat involved in voting for something that's going to make the cuts necessary to balance the budget.
While I was raising my boys in Mandan, I served on the Mandan School Board for nearly a decade, 7 of those years as president elected by my peers. And it's at that time that I really began, as a board president, leading the charge to return more local control in our education in our state to our local school systems and our local people in our communities. My main priority as the state superintendent, as an educator, is to ensure that our students are choice ready when they graduate, that they are ready to be successful after they graduate from our high schools or receive their GED. It's important that they have the knowledge, the skills, and the disposition to do anything they choose to do, whether that be going to a university or going to a trade or technical school, entering the military, or immediately into the workforce. Part of that responsibility is to close what I call the honesty gap. We have an honesty gap with our parents and our students about how ready they are after high school. My opponent will often claim that our scores have gone from 80% on our test scores down to 40%. But what he fails to mention is the fact that we changed the test and we began assessing the skills that our universities, that our trade and technical schools, and that our military was expecting, because we didn't want a surprise at the end. So with that, I want to continue another 4 years to make sure that we're serving our children well.
Please explain your view on the North Dakota Performance Accountability Plan standards.
The accountability standards are the Common Core standards currently, and I believe that the Common Core is a bad experiment. What we have done so far is we've inflicted experiment after experiment after experiment on our children. I have what I call my 80% rule, which would help eliminate a lot of that. And that is that no program, directive, or methodology can be taught at any level or used at any level of North Dakota education unless it has been proven statistically to help at least 80% of our children to succeed academically. And if that had been in place, we would not have Race to the Top, NCLB, CCSS, et cetera, which have all proven to be failed programs.
Your work as a judge helps to define what the law means to all of us. Would you share what comes to your mind as one of the more important decisions you've made to date, and why?
Sure. The important work that we do as a district court judge in North Dakota spans all levels of court, from small claims court to unlimited civil jurisdiction, wrongful death cases and the like. Can also go on the criminal side, from a speeding ticket to homicide. We also work in juvenile court, and there are a couple of types of juvenile court. There are delinquency or unruly cases where children are misbehaving, and there are deprivation cases where parents are misbehaving. And there are a number of cases that I have been involved in over a long term that have had an impact on young people from North Dakota. When I started campaigning this year, I had a woman approach me and look me in the eye and say, "Do you remember me?" And as a judge, that could be a startling question. But I did. She was a foster parent for a young man who came out of a very difficult situation. And this was years ago, but I remember the case and I remember her. And she took the time to thank me for the work that I did on that case, and she specifically thanked me for taking the time to sort out the difficult facts and to make a decision that had a huge positive impact in that child's life. And more importantly, one of the things that I do that not all district judges do is I make a point to try to get the parties to agree that I can talk to the child directly. That way, that child who's been disrupted from his family home has an opportunity to hear from the person who's making the decision about his life. And those are the cases that are the most important to me.
And so the role that the North Dakota Insurance Commissioner has over the health insurance in our state is actually pretty minor. It is in charge of setting rates and again, making sure those companies are solvent. So I've seen the impact of the firsthand of what it's done to the consumers and businesses in our state. And again, that's why I'm interested in this position. But the way that the insurance commissioner can have some impact over that is some long-term planning and how we look at our rates. We've done a very good job in North Dakota of going 4 years without a very big increase. But then in year 5, we see a 23 to 27% increase in our rates. I don't know how you budget for that as a family. I don't know how you budget for that as a small business. So it's going to take some long-term planning and also having this discussion on a national level of what we do with the current healthcare law. I'm not convinced that it's going to remain. I think you're seeing cracks in the law itself, and some drastic changes do need to come forward in order for us to all be able to sustain our health insurance coverage.
I have been in the legislature for 8 years recently, and then earlier in my life I was in the legislature from 79 to 93, so there's a number of years that I served in the legislature, so I was sort of there early and then left and then came back. And I've been most of that time on the tax committee.
Well, I think you probably could expand it on that question a little bit.
You can do so if you'd like.
Those in Richland County were witness to some staffing issues we had in the last year extension. It was my portfolio also. I grew up, I'm the only farmer in the commission, and I'm a lifelong 4-H person, one way or the other, leader. As a student, as a young person, I was a 4-H member. So it was my bag to be on that portfolio. Last year, a new extension agent came on board, and I'll just tell it the way it is because that's the way I do things. The personalities clashed between our consumer science person and this new agent, and we were always trying to work it out. I just thought it would get better, and their supervisor out of Fargo, NDSU, all of a sudden, to me, kind of took sides, and it got carried away, and all of a sudden there was paperwork and to eliminate our consumer science person and continue with the new agent that was on staff who didn't have any experience, made a lot of mistakes in my opinion, and it was just in a wrong scenario, and I didn't agree with any of it, as I was put on the front page of the local paper for quite a bit at that time, and but to end this story, that dilemma, or however you want to call it, ended. One person resigned, the agent that came on late resigned, and the consumer science person was asked to leave her situation. She was fired. That's a good way of putting it. Now, since then, can I continue on this to complete it?
Yes,
It won't take me just a few seconds.
as long as Jim doesn't mind, because he might have some questions he'd like to.
Since that point, I had a great deal of anger with this, and there were some issues that were broke on the state level. Extension knew that in the NDSU. They kind of ignored it. But then as a commission, we ignored it because it wasn't getting any better. And so in the meantime, the process that the applications were put out, and today I can report that we have two new people that have verbally committed to these positions. So in other words, we're starting off with a clean slate. They're very exciting people. One has a master's degree and is married to a local Richland County farmer. The other one is working on her master's. They're both young women and very energetic and very well educated. And I think we're going to start off anew and do very well in extension in Richland County.
Thank you.